Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Coaster Mafia. Now, you guys saw me rank North America's B&M Hypers. Today, we're going to be cranking it up a notch as we rank North America's 5 Giga coasters. These are some of the baddest coasters out there and are absolutely gargantuan thrill machines. Now, before we get into this ranking, I need you guys to absolutely bury the like button for me. We got to have this video reach record numbers. And then we also need you to subscribe to the channel and turn on the little notification bell so you can be notified whenever there's a new Coaster Mafia video. And with that out of the way, let's get right into it. A Giga coaster is one of the best showstoppers a park could have. These are the rides that you see for miles in the distance as you approach the park, and they always get you amped up for your day, and they always deliver. Each one of these rides has an amazing sense of speed, as well as a ton of intensity and amazing airtime moments. A Giga coaster is generally considered to be any roller coaster with either a height or a drop between 3 and 400 feet. So this is why you won't be seeing Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point or King Ka at Six Flags Great Adventure on this list. Now, all 5 of these roller coasters are some of the best rides that I have ever been on. So say I put your favorite ride in last place, it does not mean that I actually don't like it. All of these rides are at least a 9 out of 10 and are absolute musts for anybody visiting the parks. These are marquee attractions, and I would say each one of them is enough to draw you out to go check this place out. All of these rides have an incredible sense of speed, a massive first drop that feels like it lasts forever, plenty of airtime, and some surprising intensity. Often a crank up at the very least from your typical hypercoaster. Now, with that said, coming in at number 5, my personal least favorite of the Giga coasters, we are heading to Southern Ohio to talk about Orion at Kings Island. Now, despite Orion being the weakest Giga, there's still so much to love about this attraction. First off, I love the name and theme. Orion is just a badass name, and when you're looking at a ride, it's a Giga coaster, it's a massive coaster. I think the space theme really works well, and the whole area that they redid at Kings Island for the ride, Area 72, I think is really well done. I like the synergy with Flight of Fear. It's really solid overall. Now, a lot of people have criticized Orion for being the least ambitious of the Giga coasters, and I do get that sentiment, but there's still a lot to love here. You have an amazing first drop that just hits so hard, especially with those B&M clamshell restraints, as well as you have some really solid airtime moments here. You have a really good speed hill, camelback, as well as a nice pop of airtime right at the end of the ride before you hit the brakes. But you also have a couple nice moments of intensity. I thought the helix was really solid, and all in all, you're always going to get a really solid sense of speed when you're going over 90 miles an hour. I mean, this ride is naturally no joke. That said, I do feel like there's a couple of wasted elements and missed opportunities here. I mean, you're at a park like Kings Island where you have so much space to work with that you'd think they could have went with something, a little bit longer, more on the likes of Fury 325, but I'm still happy overall with what they did. Now, of course, this does pair with the rumors that Orion wasn't originally meant to be a Giga coaster at Kings Island, but after some scrapped plans was eventually turned into what we have today. But overall, I still think B&M and Kings Island did a really good job with the project. The theming of the ride is solid, and there's a lot of really good elements here as well. But I wouldn't say Orion blows anything out of the water when compared to the other coasters here on this list, hence why it sits here at the bottom, despite being a fantastic ride. Now, coming in fourth, we have Project 305, formerly Intimidator 305 at King's Dominion. Now, Project 305, I'm guessing, is just a placeholder name for now, as like Thunder Striker or Carowinds, the Intimidator license is expired, so now the park is looking to retheme the ride. However, they have not come up with the name for it yet, so hence we have Project 305. Anyways, this was the second Giga coaster ever built, this one built by Intamin rather than B&M. And this is known as one of the most intense roller coasters ever built. And for good reason. I would definitely say it from my experiences on it that it lives up to that name. This thing is an aggressive ride unlike any other ever built and probably ever will be built. In some ways, this ride is almost too aggressive. Why, might you ask? Well, after the first drop, which is amazing like any Giga drop you're going to have, you have probably what has to be probably the most intense turnaround ever on a roller coaster. This low to the ground banked turn, I mean, even just from my experiences on it, because I've heard people say they blacked out on it. It's one of those things where like you don't feel like you really know what's going on until you're probably already an element or two after going through this turn. It is so intense you could barely see. It is probably one of the weirdest sensations you'll ever have on a roller coaster. And I could see how that would be hit or miss for some people. Me personally, I think is really solid. And the rest of the ride is full of elements that you're not going to find in any of the other coasters on this list. While many of these other rides, feature nice floater to flowjector airtime hills, the moments on this ride are focused more on intense transitions. You have a lot of snaps to the left, to the right. They're going to kind of give you a lot of lateral force, as well as some solid pops of airtime as well. The layout here is extremely unique, and if that's your thing, this might be at the top of your list. But for me personally, I like a bit more of a nice blend of aggression and gracefulness that I feel like the other three coasters above Project 305 do just a bit better. And one of those three rides, my number three selection, is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Millennium Force is one of the most iconic roller coasters ever built. This is the oldest of the Giga coasters and was the first roller coaster over 300 feet with a traditional chain lift. Ever since its opening in 2000, the ride has been a staple of Cedar Point's lineup, and for good reason. That feeling as you ascend the lift hill and get to look out over Lake Erie is truly immaculate. And then you go down one of the best drops on any roller coaster and up into probably the most intense banked turn you're going to find other than the one mentioned on Intimidator 305. The start of Millennium Force got to be one of the best starts to any roller coaster out there. But the ride doesn't end there. Millennium Force is a very long layout full of quick airtime hills as well as some nice transitions. It's not nearly as intense as Intimidator 305, but I like it as it gives the ride a bit more a sense of grace as well as gives you an opportunity to really take in the speed that you're going at. Has a nice mix of more low to the ground elements with again some camelbacks, so the ride never really loses too much speed. Besides the amazing start, my other favorite part's got to be the end of the ride as you go through an awesome tunnel and then emerge and you're right along the queue line for a final airtime hill before you do a U-turn into the ride's brakes. Now, this is just a classic moment. I mean, as you're waiting in line, nothing gets you more amped up to ride than just watching the coaster pass by you like that. And when you're on the ride, it just feels incredible. Overall, Millennium Force might not be as, I guess, fine tuned as the two rides ahead of it on this list, but it's phenomenal everything it does. It is a must do every time I go to Cedar Point, and it's honestly one of the most re-rideable coasters in the world. Another thing I will commend it for is its fantastic restraints. The intimate T-bar that this ride uses gives you, I guess, more room than probably any other restraint I could even think of besides maybe a buzz bar. I mean, yeah, it might come down your thighs, but the rest of your body is very exposed, very open, and it just adds that exhilarating sensation as you feel all the forces that Millennium Force has to offer. One of the best rides at Cedar Point after 24 years, and one of the best coasters out there. Now, coming in at the runner-up spot, we have Leviathan at Canada's Wonderland. Now, I don't know if it's because Leviathan is in Canada, but I've always felt this ride wasn't talked about enough. And it's interesting because this was B&M's first crack at a Giga coaster the size of Intimidator 305 and Millennium Force, and I think they knocked it out of the park. This is a fantastic ride from start to finish, and honestly, if a ride a few years later didn't come and kind of one up it in every way, I think this would be the best Giga coaster out there. I just think B&M has perfectly mastered the craft where you have that kind of grace and nice airtime that you have on a B&M Hyper, but then you up the scale. So you just add that little bit of intensity and speed, that comes with being a ride that's over 300 feet tall. First off, you have that amazing first drop. And those B&M clamshell restraints, while not as nice as the T-bar, still give you some great room to really take in the drop and give some amazing floater air all the way down. From there, the layout of Leviathan is just solid all around. Again, you have a perfect mix of some really solid camelbacks that'll give some great floater air. But then you also have some really nice maneuvers that feel very smooth and graceful, very fluid, but then also really deliver on that sense of speed that the best Gigas can deliver. Where hypers are limited by kind of air layouts that are mostly just focused on seas of camelbacks, Leviathan mixes in camelbacks with these, again, like lower to the ground, longer, drawn out elements that just allow you to feel just that 90 miles an hour that you're going at. And, given that this was their first attempt at this ride, really is remarkable. This is, again, very rideable. The name is awesome. I didn't even mention the name. Leviathan has got to be one of the coolest names out there. And the ride experience lives up to the hype. This is a gargantuan roller coaster that has the perfect balance of speed and intensity. It's a personal favorite of mine and a reason I am so stoked to return to Canada's Wonderland this summer. Now, if you've been thinking about the North American Gigas, you know that number one isn't going to be a shocker. All four of the rides I mentioned on this list are all amazing up to this point. They're all fantastic, but there's only one ride here that sits in my current top 10. If you've watched that video, you already know what I'm talking about. This ride is just slightly a cut above the rest. We're talking about Fury 325 at Carowinds. Now, I'll keep this one fairly brief, as I already did talk about this ride in my top 10 roller coasters. But what makes Fury 325 better than the rest of the Gigas really comes down to, I guess, the ride's scale, as well as its execution. Now, I mentioned in that video that I feel like Fury 325 takes a piece of what makes all of these other Gigas so good. You have just a little bit of that intensity on a ride like Intimidator 305, especially with some of those really solid transitions. But then you also have that's that gracefulness and exhilarating feeling that you get in a ride like Millennium Force. But then you combine that with the execution of the rides like Orion and especially Leviathan, and then you crank it up just a little more, and you have Fury 325. First off, this is such a long ride. Yes, you could talk about the fact that it is the tallest of any of these coasters and the fastest, but the length is arguably the biggest separator. This ride has 6,600 feet of track, and it's a massive layout that never relents from the drop to the brakes. Like Leviathan, you have some fantastic camelbacks mixed in with some amazing banked turns, some great turnarounds, some amazing and fluid transitions. And again, no speed here is relinquished throughout the ride. You maintain it all the way through to the brakes. And remember, you're going 95 miles an hour and you feel that speed, especially if you get in the front row. If there's one roller coaster you should ever try to ride in the front row, besides maybe King Dakar, you're going to be looking at Fury 325. Yes, you're not going to get that amazing drop nearly as much in the front row, but the rest of the ride, the feeling of the wind hitting your face is just impeccable. Overall, Fury 325 is one of the best roller coaster experiences in the world and is enough of a reason alone to travel out to Carowinds. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, all 5 North American Gigas ranked up. Let me know in the comments below what your ranking is. And guys, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We got a whole summer of amazing Coaster Mafia content coming soon. We are doing a lot this summer. We're traveling across the country to all sorts of new parks, as well as revisiting some parks that I've been to and riding some of their brand new attractions, such as Top Thrill 2 at Cedar Point, Iron Menace at Dorney Park, and the new Flash at Great Adventure. This is going to be a very exciting summer for the channel. We're just getting started, so hit the subscribe button and turn on the little bell so you can be notified whenever we drop a video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to keep it Mafia.